One of my childhood homes had a balcony that was attached to both my mother's bedroom and mine via big double-glass doors in each of our rooms. Next to the balcony are 2 trees. One I often used to climb up and down from the balcony. This balcony faced out to the street. One night when I was about 13 and my brother and mother weren't home, I was reading in bed with a very dim reading light. I heard what sounded like something moving in one of the trees outside, but this didn't worry me as possums and bats are common in our area. Now I had thin curtains on the glass doors that separated my room and the balcony. As mentioned previously, the doors faced out towards the street where street lamp light was always visible through my curtains. Shortly after hearing the tree rustling noises, I see a shadow slowly move past the doors, at which point I immediately turn off my reading light and freeze like a deer in headlights. The shadow is tall, so it wasn't one of the neighbor kids that I'm friends with, and it wasn't my 5 feet mother. The person moved slowly, creeping as though they were trying to not be noticed. They wouldn't likely be able to see into my room, but I could see them thanks to the streetlights behind them creating a dark silhouette. They moved past my doors out of sight. I sat there unable to move or even think about what to do other than be absolutely still. That is, until I heard another sound, the sound of someone trying to open a glass door, my mom's doors to the balcony. I didn't know if she had locked them or not, but I wasn't taking chances. I moved as quickly and as silently as I could to my bedroom door and locked it. I listened for what the person was doing now. They were still jiggling the glass door handle, but it sounded like the doors weren't opening. I felt relief. This person couldn't get in, surely. All I had to do was wait for them to realize that, and then they would leave, right? Well, I heard light footsteps move back along the balcony to my set of glass doors until I saw his shadow stop directly in front of them. Again, I froze. He couldn't see me. He couldn't know I can see him. I saw a shadow of a hand reach up to my door's handle and my heart stopped. Had I actually locked those doors myself today? I was out there earlier. What if I forgot? The seconds leading up to him grabbing the handle felt like an eternity. But thankfully, when this person tried to open the door, it did not open. It was locked. I sighed such a sigh of relief I was worried he had heard it. After this, he began pacing the length of the balcony. I didn't have a mobile phone as my mom thought I was too young to have one yet, and the landline was at the other end of the house. But I was too scared to take my eyes off this person, even to call for help. I was silently crying, tears falling down my cheeks as I internally prayed they would just leave. Then I heard him stop moving. He then said, "I could just break the glass, you know." Before I could even process this, I saw car headlights turn around the corner of my street and then stop at our property gate. My mom was home. The person on balcony moved out of sight and I heard a loud thump as they jumped off of it. When my mom came inside, I was hysterical and was barely coherent in telling her what happened. Eventually, I got the message across and she called the police. They never found or caught anyone, but a neighbor reported a truck in the street that matched the description of a truck that had been reported recently for attempted child abductions near my school a block away. Since I walked that short distance daily, the police suspected that he had followed me or seen that I lived there and waited for me to be alone. The whole thing happened back in summer 2016. My parents go on holidays quite often, and I used to stay home alone for 2 weeks at the time to look after our dogs and take care of the garden in general. I've always been a bit of a scaredy cat due to my experiences with being harassed and followed home alone a couple of times. My neighborhood was relatively new at the time, so the whole thing was surrounded by forests, and oftentimes you could come across some junkies lurking in the forest while walking home from shops. However, despite that, I usually felt very safe in my house, staying with 4 big dogs and all. Nothing would ever really happen since most of my neighbors were my dad's friends who were all in the army. For some reason, it gives this odd sense of safety cause who would be stupid enough to try and break in the area like that. Oddly enough, during that particular summer, a couple of break-ins happened on my street, but my parents still decided to leave me home alone, reassuring me I have nothing to worry because I have my dogs, and our house is surrounded by a big fence. My fence has little spikes on top, so it's almost impossible to jump across it without hurting yourself. So, first couple of days were fine. Nothing weird happened except some thuds I heard in my garden, but thought nothing of it since usually it was just martins causing some mischief in my mom's flowers. It would happen so often that even my dogs would ignore it at that point. 2 days passed and I finally have to leave for shops but do loads of stuff to do throughout the day. I had to go in the evening when it was getting slightly dark outside. I went shopping, got my stuff, and would walk back home through my usual path. People would usually walk their dogs there, so it was quite busy in the evening because it was something in between a park and a forest. I was just casually walking, minding my own business, texting someone on my phone when I noticed that some guy I passed suddenly stood up from the bench and started walking behind me, but again thought maybe it's someone from my neighborhood that I don't recognize and he's just walking in the same direction as me. So I exit the forest into a normal road where houses start. I live right at the end of it. Guy's still walking behind me. I still think that maybe he lives in one of these houses, but nope. I get to the last junction where my house is. Guy is still behind me, and at this point I know he's not one of my neighbors, so my blood runs cold. Luckily, my neighbor who lives to the left of my house was outside watering his plants and spotted me as I was walking by and started talking to me. So the guy who was walking behind me immediately noticed it and just started running away again towards the forest, which ultimately gave me creeps. He was clearly following me to my house. I called my parents to tell them that it happened, but again, they told me I have nothing to worry about. Our neighborhood is safe. I had my dogs with me and so on and so on. I tried to calm down and go on with my things as usual. Whenever my parents are out of town, I sleep in their bedroom downstairs, since I don't want my dogs to walk the stairs in the dark and possibly hurt themselves. That night, as usual, I was laying in bed, reading a book, my dogs already soundly sleeping in bed with me. I suppose they could sense I was distressed because they usually sleep on the floor around the bed. I heard a thud coming from outside, like a little thud on the window in the room next to mine. Again, thought it's just martins, but this one time my dog started growling at the window in my bedroom. Couple seconds of silence, another thud, this time on window in my bedroom. That already made me panic, but I tried to stay calm nonetheless. However, the third got louder, each coming from windows on the ground floor. Someone was banging on every window of my house, making my dogs go absolutely crazy, running around the house wherever the bangs were coming from. At that point, I was in tears, knowing exactly what's happening, so I got out of my bedroom and walked to the center of my house where I can see the main door. And here's the thing, my main door has a window in it so you can see inside. I sat down in the darkness, couple feet away from the door, waiting, hoping and praying that someone will get scared of my dogs barking. But nope, I wasn't this lucky. First, I see my dogs rushing to the door, barking at it before there's anything there, but then I see a black silhouette outside my main door peeking inside and then banging on the little window as I'm sitting there helpless. I moved out of sight, hiding under the table, and got my phone out as I'm still hearing that man trying to break the glass. I called my dad, barely being able to breathe. He didn't pick up. Right, it was like 2 a.m. and they were on holidays. I tried 2 more times until my mom picked up, very confused why I'm calling in the middle of the night. I managed to spit out, "Someone is trying to break in, I don't know what to do." At that point, the man was trying to open the door, banging with his whole body on the frame to the point where my mom could hear it on the call. My dad was frantically trying to call everyone who could come and help me, his brother, my neighbors, my grandma. Everyone was put in a full mobility at that very moment to come here as fast as they could. My neighbor, the same one who spoke to me earlier that day, was the first one to come outside and scare the guy away. He rushed to my garden, but I was still too afraid to open the main door, despite the fact I could see the neighbor standing in front of it. I knew that man was still on my property, but back of the garden was pitch black, and my neighbor didn't want to risk going there on his own and getting potentially knocked out with something heavy. 10 minutes later, my uncle, aunt, and grandma pull up to my house and I can see them all outside. My uncle had a key, so he opened the door, letting my dogs outside so they could chase after the intruder. My dogs are hunting dogs, so they're not cute little puppies for strangers. I will never forget how my grandma and aunt approached me when I was clinging onto the chair, absolutely in tears as my mom was trying to figure out what's happening on the call. The man escaped through the back of the garden into my other neighbor's garden, I'm guessing trying to get away from my dogs, but he was finally gone. He did manage to damage the little window in my main door. The glass was already slightly cracked. Door itself got loose on the door hinges. I don't want to think about what could have happened if they didn't get to my house that quickly. My girlfriend and I had been living in our new apartment approximately 3 or 4 months at the time of this story. For clarification and background, we live in a basement-level unit. The one and only entrance is inside the building and down the stairs. However, there's 4 windows facing nothing but a row of shrubbery and tree line. It was roughly 10 p.m. She was at work for the evening, and I had the place to myself. Lights on and TV blasting, I was sitting in the living room planning on eating trashy and binge-watching the remaining episodes of Broad City. Not long into it, however, I heard a scraping sound from the bathroom. My first thought, a mouse? Which was the last thing we needed. So I get up and make my way through the hallway as quietly as I can to catch a glimpse of it. The closer I got, the more I realized the scratching wasn't coming from the bathroom, but rather the window in the master bedroom. My next guess was it's simply kids playing outside, as they tend to, or the bunny I had seen bouncing out there that morning. Even more likely, someone taking a dog out to pee. I paused, tried to hone my hearing, and only then noticed it wasn't a sound echoing from outside, but rather scratching on the window itself. I started into the bedroom when I noticed the sound stopped and moved to the adjacent window in the room next to it. A smaller bedroom that gave us the creeps as is. We never used it, there's no light source, it simply sits dark and empty aside from a few boxes of my clothing. Now thinking back, it was probably a bad idea. I had hoped upon being discovered that whomever it was, obvious to me now that it was a someone, not a something, would run off. I had caught him red-handed, so I steeled myself and yelled out, "I hear you! What do you want?" The scratching stopped instantly. I waited. After what felt like an eternity, I assumed the coast was clear. I made my way to the windowsill and slowly cracked open the blinds. I don't know why I did. Because there he crouched, peering into me with the widest and wildest eyes I've ever seen on a person. Most certainly strung out on something. He told me to let him in. As shocked as I was, I almost laughed at the audacity, as if I was just going to swing open the window and let him in. Using the remaining courage I had mustered, I tell him not so gently, "No, get the fuck away from my house." He again told me to let him in, to which I informed him I was calling the police and hurriedly proceeded to do just that. I even turned the phone to face him for added effect. Unfortunately, it had the exact opposite effect. He was seething, raging, and practically foaming at the mouth. He drew back and punched the window, repeatedly slamming his fists and palms against the glass. The window started cracking, blood flinging up like a gore-filled movie effect. I was out of there fast, heart racing, slamming the door shut behind me. So tempted to run out the front door, but incredibly scared that he would just come around the front of the building. It would take no time at all for him to do. Torn and trapped, I pick up the nearest blunt object and placed myself in between the 2 doors. I figured whichever one moved first, I'd go out the other. I still had the phone to my ear, urging the 911 operator to get someone here fast. In my panicked state, I also feared for my girlfriend who would be coming home soon. I messaged her warning her about what was going on. Eventually, sirens and a pounding came to the front door. The police had arrived. I explained what had happened, and they searched the apartment and area near the window, coming back with a set of keys that he had possibly dropped, but no sign of him other than the broken window. They took a sample from the blood splatter on what was left of the glass. My girlfriend came home shortly after, having left work early and calling the police herself. I'm grateful she did. Maintenance had been notified, and they threw up temporary boarding until it could be repaired. They never actually found the guy. Or if they did, I never received any updates about it. Definitely didn't get any sleep that night.